Alrighty, noon. Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll get started into our Singer Island Town Hall, and I'll just introduce myself. I'm, as many of you know, Sam Brown, Dr. Botel's legislative aide, and Councilwoman Botel could not be here in person, but she is here virtually. She makes every effort to make sure she's always available. Yep, Dr. Botel.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I see some familiar faces. Of course, the Millers are always first on the scene. And I thought I saw Connie Kirk and even Letitia, but it's a little difficult from this perspective to see who's there. But thank you all for being here this evening. And thank you, those of you who are watching remotely. I want to thank all of the staff members who are here this evening. Chief Kurd, Mr. Evans, I think Ms. Jacobs is joining us, Ms. Busby, John Sprague to talk about the marina, and of course, my ever-present sidekick, Sam Brown, who's going to be your host this evening in my stead. I'm quarantining for the rest of this week, but I hope to be back in action sometime the following week. And I'm feeling just fine. That Regeneron treatment, it does wonders. So thanks, Sam, again for taking the lead here, and I really appreciate it. And I'd like to introduce our outstanding fire chief, Chief John Kurd. He's going to give us a few words about the fire station. Chief?
Thank you, Councilwoman Botel. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to follow up briefly on the status of Fire Station 86. We have completed our first round of community meetings that were held last week to discuss the proposed plans for Station 86. We've taken in all of the feedback and comments that we've received. We're compiling that information as well as some other information to talk about potential alternative sites. And we look to bring that information back to City Council here in the very near future for a decision on whether or not we are to move forward with the reconstruction of Fire Station 86.
Alrighty, City Manager Jonathan Evans. Was that it, Chief Kurd? Wonderful. Okay, Mr. Evans. Our great city manager who gets all the work done.
Thank you, Sammy. So I think the chief left the presentation for me to answer any questions that there may be as it relates to Fire Station 86. So I appreciate it, Chief. But nonetheless, to kind of summarize where we are, we had a series of community meetings. We had some feedback and some perspectives that were shared from persons that attended those community meetings. And we look to come back before our board here in the middle of September to get direction as to how we wish to proceed. In the preliminary review process, we did have a conversation, a very brief conversation, with the property owner that has assembled the parcels that are directly out the doors here at the Ambassador Center to look at the feasibility of constructing Fire Station 86 there. And for the bargain price of already $10 million, that option doesn't look like it's going to materialize, but we don't know if that's a true number, but that's the first number that was thrown out by the property owner with regards to that property. So if that is in fact the case, it really limits the ability for us to move forward with Fire Station 86 at that location. And so we're still exploring some other locations or other opportunities, but it is probably going to significantly delay our ability to move forward with Fire Station 86. I know that, and one of the options, and not that we're pushing this option, just an option, because our job is to provide the board with all the options to consider, which we know would be met with probably a resounding no, that's not a good idea, would be to look at what the permitting process would be to, in essence, fill in the wetland area that's adjacent to the fire station to be able to push the fire station back. And we know that the community sentiments and even administration sentiments, that's not a good idea. And that's not something that we would, as staff, would support, but nonetheless, it's an option that we need to bring before the board for consideration. So one of the most challenging things that all of you know is probably putting a fire station in a community or pulling a fire station out of a community. We do have a email from the chief property appraiser in Palm Beach County, and said that we asked the question, is there any adverse impact associated with siting a fire station next to any residential communities or what have you. And they said, actually, there's no data or information or empirical data that supports that. And actually, in some cases, and they put in the email, they've seen actually a bump associated with the location of a fire station next to certain residential properties. But we are going to move forward with a comprehensive analysis that can address that question unequivocally, so we can go ahead and provide that to the board as part of the due diligence process associated with Fire Station 86. It does not stop our progress on Fire Station 88, but it significantly, whatever the direction the board gives us, will delay us moving forward with Fire Station 86 and us leading to have additional conversations with the board about the possibility and feasibility of relocating the station. But we'll know here probably in the next 24 hours when the plumber goes to Fire Station 86 and tells us what some of the challenges are associated with some of the conditions of the facility. So it's a ever-evolving, ever-moving target, and we hope to be able to provide more information to the community as quickly as possible, and then ultimately get direction from the board as to how they wish to proceed. So with that being said, are there any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, perspectives associated with Fire Station 86? Yes, sir. So the question is, what is the issue in regards to keeping the station where it is? Unfortunately, to construct the station at the existing location, it is inadequate to be able to provide fire suppression services and fire suppression support because of the floodplain map and what the flooding that occurs on that site. And in order to be able to provide or to construct on that site, we would have to come into compliance with what the new regulations are. And so you're looking at a situation where you're going to have to elevate the existing footprint roughly about 6 feet, and there's not enough property to be able to make the ramp to where fire vehicles will be able to go into that particular station. So it provides for a significant challenge for us. The other side of it is during king tide or high tide, we basically get water that comes up to the back of the facility. So that's a issue where right now our fire personnel's vehicles during king tide or high tide or even a rainstorm, their vehicles are sitting in salt water, their personal vehicles. So it's just too restrictive of a site. Yes.
What about the property here, right down the street where they used to have all the paperwork for Palm Beach Tour and all that? Why can't we do that as that other little thing that says it's a dog groomer and rentals and all that?
Well, yes. So the question is, why can't we utilize some of the property that's over here where the community garden is and the other area? That property is owned by a developer as well, and so we have an interim agreement with them, and the intent is that they will be moving forward with their development on that particular property. So it's not something that, I'm sure the city can buy it for tens of millions of dollars, but it's probably not going to be cost effective for us to do that. I can't speak on behalf of the developer. I haven't seen plans, but there's been conversations about multiple different iterations, but they would have to go through a process to move forward. But the property is not under the control of the city at this moment. And I think that site also provides, it's a linear site, so it does provide some restrictions in regards to our ability to get apparatus in and out and ingress, egress. So it is it's still a challenging site. And then the property that's on the intercoastal, that's available for $25 million. So that's, if somebody wants to buy it for us, we'll build the best fire station in Palm Beach County. But
The property that's right across the street, you're talking about where PNC, the bank is sitting. Has anyone approached the owner of that property to ask if they were interested in leasing it?
and the question was the property, PNC Bank, and the other parcels around it. They've just assembled those parcels for $3.7 million. We reached out to that property owner. Their plan is to move forward with a development on that site unless we were to purchase that property from them. And today the number was $10 million.
Oh,
They purchased it for 3.7 and they want to sell it for 10?
Yep.
We need a little more
Well, they've got all the negotiation chips. We're the city. They know that we need the property. There's only conceivable a couple options. So in order for, and any developer or any property owner is going to say, you need to make it worth my while, then unfortunately, that's just too high of a number. We think that the real number is probably close to $5 million. But then that makes that station that much more expensive, and the costs ultimately are shared by the residents of the community. So if we were to buy that property at $5 million, it now makes it the most expensive fire station that we would construct. In addition to, we think that that's the number. We don't know if that's in fact the number. So we're gonna still push on the property owner a little bit more because we want to finalize a number so we can share with the board.
And does that condominiums over here, you gotta have authority. Does that property owner not need the city's authorization to build?
The question was, do they need the city's authorization to build? Yes, they have to go through a process to get city's authorization, but they have an inherent property rights. They have the ability, if they build things to the code and what the development standards are, they get the ability to construct what they want to construct. We can't hold it because we need a fire station. It can't work like that. That's illegal. Next question. So the sites that we're talking about is obviously the PNC Bank site, the site that we communicated as far as adjacent to the Ritz property. We've looked at the existing site. We've also talked about the feasibility of maybe a discussion with the county. We've had preliminary conversation with them, Ocean Reef Park, but the challenge they have there is if you construct something there, they lose all that parking. And so at minimum, we would have to replace that parking. And so now you're talking a structured parking garage. And I don't know how the appetite would be for the community that's directly adjacent from the park looking at a structured parking garage of 2 stories or what have you. So that's still a conversation. There was also discussions about the Ocean Mall and the parking lot at the Ocean Mall. Can that property be utilized? And so we're looking at what our lease agreement is with the property or the entity that leases the property from the city. And we're probably in a situation where if we were to construct it in the Ocean Mall parking lot, you'd have to do some structured parking to be able to accommodate the parking demands of the area. So all that's being looked at, but there's legal agreements that run with those properties, so it makes it challenging. But those are the properties that are in play as it relates to potential new homes for Fire Station 86 at this particular moment. People have even asked about MacArthur Park. That's outside of our city limits. So, that pushes us far, far north and impedes our ability to be able to respond. As the chief said, we want to move the station closer to where majority of the calls are so we can be able to respond to those calls a lot quicker. So,
Mr. Evans,
yes.
we promised that people watching remotely might be able to have some questions answered. I'm just wondering if Sam has gotten anything by text or email.
Nothing as of yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think we had.
That she got $60,000 got paid under the table, sort of, for permits. But anyway, we saved money on her, and then Fannie Roseman, we saved money on him, so why can't we spend more money on our fire department?
And first and foremost, I really want to keep the conversation around the fire department and what we need to do as it relates to fire issues. I don't want to get into the other issues. Those issues conceivably are in the past, and I want to focus on where do we look to place our fire department. Well, I'd love if we can find, and again, it's a policy decision that the board has to be able to wrap their head around that says, hey, Mr. Manager, I'm okay to pay an X amount of dollar premium for the siting of a fire station on the island. If the board says that they're okay with paying more, then we move forward. It's strictly a policy and a numbers decision that the board has to make. Our job as staff is to provide the options and they make what they believe to be the best decision. You elect your elected officials who are entrusted with that responsibility of being good stewards of your tax dollars. Because there is going to be people, believe it or not, that even though if I was to able to acquire those parcels for $5 million and say that's the place, you will have people that will say, why did you pay $5 million when you have property over here that you already own? So there is, two sides of every coin, but it's the board's challenge to deal with the situation based on the best information that they have available to and what they think is in the best interest of a majority of the residents of the community. Ma'am, and then we'll come back here. So the question is in regards to eminent domain and taking property for a fire station. There is an eminent domain process. However, it's a very expensive and costly and burdensome process that is not something that we wouldn't explore, but we're trying to do it the easier way, because at the end of the day, if we go through that process, the only ones that win is the attorneys. And then you have to pay the property owner what the value of the asset is. And if I say I can build professional offices or condos or what have you, now you're not paying what he acquired it for. You're paying it what the value of the asset is and based on what the plans could be for that. But, all options are on the table. We prefer it to be a smooth process if we have to go through property acquisition, because no government entity wishes to go through that process. Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty.
We have one more right here, I think. Yeah.
I know the back parcel belongs to the city, right?
A portion of it, yeah.
Okay, has consideration been given to the use that it is, how it's used now, extensively, how it's used now, and whether that could be considered in part as a possibility for fire station?
So we've had some discussions about, and this property is somewhat challenged from the standpoint, it doesn't give us easy access to be able to punch out. And you have so much pedestrian traffic, and the same problems, not to the degree that we had at the previous site that we were talking about, but it puts it in the back. And then these buildings are individually owned. So in the event that you wanted to construct a fire station back there, I would argue the fact that you're actually providing a quicker response time to Palm Beach Shores than you are to Riviera Beach, because you're so far back in the neighborhoods. And the other side of it is the footprint and how we would construct the station. There is a portion of this property that's not owned by us, and so whatever the developer has plans on that site, that may furthermore impede our ability to be able to construct a station on the back half of this property. One of the things that we want to do, and that's why we're looking at this site and the parking lot at the Ocean Walk and even the site at the Ritz that we were talking about, is the ability to get out on the roadway as quickly as possible. If we have to meander through or the vehicles can't pull into the station, it makes it just that much more complicated. Here, if you did a station here, you'd have to back into the station, and that becomes somewhat problematic. But all options are on the table. We're looking at all viable solutions. At the end of the day, we want to be able to move as quickly as possible to be able to get a fire station built here on the island. Coach?
Yeah, one last question. I had talked about any place that you're going to buy it, right? It's a seller's market, am I correct?
That is correct.
So they want to know anybody that owns any property, even if it was that property across the bridge, which is not owned by us, it would hold you up also.
Yeah, so the question was, as it relates to the market, this is definitely a seller's market. That's why the individual that owns the property can throw out a number at $10 million, and you have to really give it some credence, because the value of land, especially in a community like ours that we get 364 days of sunshine, and you can smell the ocean and you can get the ocean breeze, makes it that much more valuable. And so when you look to conceivably acquire that parcel, one of the things that people need to realize is that you take that property off the tax roll and you take it off the tax roll forever. And then what happens is, if we look to move the station here, realize there's still residential behind it that's going to have the same type of issues or complaints. And so at some point, we're going to have to make a decision. but this is probably the worst time to be looking for available property to be able to assemble an acre and a half. If we were looking for a couple of residential lots, great, but the reality is the amount of property we need to construct the fire station is so large, and you only have so many opportunities. And then the challenge is, if you move the station off the island, it impacts the system and our ability to provide service in our community. So that's something that's concerning. Yes, ma'am.
If all these other options do not pan out, for whatever reason, is the possibility that the fire station where it's located now would remain there, if granted, elevating and then doing what you need to protect the building and the vehicles from king tides? Is that
So the question is saying if okay, the question is, if we by process of elimination eliminate all the properties that are in consideration, is the existing property still viable? The existing property is only viable, and like I said, this is a big disclaimer, so I just want to make sure I make the record clear. We're not proposing this, we're communicating an option to the board, but staff is not in favor of this option. You can conceivably look to fill in some of the wetlands and push the station back, and that will provide you the opportunity to be able to have enough of a ramp to where you can go into the station. Now, by doing that, obviously, you would be impacting wetlands, and then there's mitigation associated with that, et cetera. However, we've already had the conversations. If worst case scenario, and we have to delay this project, we would be more inclined, because if we decide to do that, you're effectively going to have to close that station down to be able to do the wetland mitigation and the work necessary to push the station back. So you're going to have to relocate the station. We've already had the conversations about the possibility of utilizing the space we're in today as an interim fire station, because the end of the useful life of that station is, I don't want to say it's here, but it's really, 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 really close. And so we're already preparing for a situation that this space may be cannibalized for the purposes of being Fire Station 86 in the interim until we find a long-term home for it. So that's where we are, but there would have to be significant site work that would have to occur on that site for it to be a viable option. Yes.
Mr. Evans, they have the property on the 15th Street where you all at right now.
Yes.
You don't have enough land to build over there?
So the question was about the public works site that the city has. It's so far removed from this part of our community, and then it overlaps with Fire Station 88's response time. So you can't have a situation where anytime we put a fire station on the west side of the tracks, that means you would have 75% of your fire units that would actually be on the west side of the community. And then you have the train track that at any given time, we all know that a train can actually separate our community, where you may only have one unit or one station that can respond. So just from a service delivery model, it's too risky of us being able to do that as it relates to sending our fire station that far west. We really want to keep one on the island because as it works to the benefit of the system.
Add a part B to that. So a couple of people work there over at 15th Street. Now, is that a given they're going to be, because obviously it's going to be a different time they'll be there for a while.
The intent behind the city acquired some years ago, the 1.9 acres on the corner of Blue Heron and Avenue L. The old public works site, we also have the frontage on Blue Heron. That is going to be the municipal service center, which is actually going to be where the public works campus is going to be, as well as the new utility district. So they will eventually move out of that building that's on 15th and 13th. And that building would be something that the city has an asset that it can conceivably sell to be able to generate some of the revenue associated that it used to purchase the building. I believe we purchased the building for a little over $7.5 million, And I think the last appraisal that I saw, it came up at 10. And right now in this environment, it may be worth every bit of $15 million. So that's another asset that the city has that conceivably can be put for sale once we build the new home for Public Works and the utility district. Yes.
Jonathan, I have a question on email. I don't know if Sam is going to be doing these. Sam, are you going to be asking these questions from email?
Yes, I'm reviewing them as you send them to me.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
All right.
I said I'm reviewing them as you send them to me.
Okay, thank you. There's one about the charter that I think is important, so thanks.
Chief Curd, are you still on the line?
I am, yes.
So what is the ideal acreage that we need for property as it relates to the station here on the island?
What we're looking for is approximately, you're looking at just shy of 2 acres, especially when we look at what the turning radius is. If we're going to look to design a drive-through station, which in all accounts is a safer station to build than a back-end station, you're going to be at 2 acres, but it's not just 2 acres. It's being able to have the access on one side. So you're trying to, it's kind of difficult. You can't plop it in the middle of 2 other buildings. We could go slightly smaller than 2 acres if it's on a roadway, Eastway, Westway, Lakeshore Drive. So then you have the roadway where you can turn in, but we're at 1.5 acres to 2 acres for a 3-bay station, which we think is needed on Singer Island. Now, if the residents and the elected officials opt for a 2-bay station with no plans for growth of municipal services, we can look at that. But we are talking about, some growth opportunities for community risk reduction and water rescue that we currently can't do now because we simply don't have the space to provide for that.
In addition to Chief's comment, I also want to communicate to the public some stuff that they probably don't realize as well, is that Ocean Rescue, our lifeguards, actually are in the fire department. They are a division within the fire department. And the intent behind having the fire station there, where we proposed it at the tennis courts adjacent to the Ricks at Ocean Walk, was that we can have better unison in regards to Ocean Rescue. And at the end of the day, what we want to move forward is having our lifeguards that are EMTs, but more so paramedics, because the biggest risk and vulnerability that we have as it relates to a recreational access is the ocean. And so we made that change back in 2017, and at the end of the day, Chief is trying to move his personnel to becoming EMT paramedics, so when there is an issue, that they can respond at the same care and at the same level that somebody that would be sitting on a rescue box. So I think it's important to know the synergy that we were going to look to create with establishing the station there. The other side of it is we were also going to incorporate a meeting space that can accommodate roughly over 100 to 125 people in the actual station there. So it would be an area where HOAs and community members can utilize the space where they would have views of the park as well as the ocean. If we move forward with not siting the station there, that stuff goes away because now we have to focus. If we're already spending $4 to $5 million on property, we can't do some of the additional amenities. We really have to focus fire rescue exclusively, and we won't have some of the spaces that we are looking to plan for and some of the synergy that we're looking to create as it relates to moving it from the proposed location. I think we have here, and then you have a, yes.
Jonathan, the feed is down. If you can check with Walter, please.
He's on it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess that my personal opinion as a resident, it's more important that we have the safety and the ability for the fire company to react rather than meeting space. I would sacrifice meeting space because a lot of the condos have their own and there's other things you can do. I would sacrifice that if it meant, more expense
Yeah, and certainly the question was, if folks didn't hear it, was that there was support from this resident in regards to taking away some of the amenities that we were looking to put in the station as it relates to meeting space, and we would certainly do that. If the station doesn't go at a location at property that the city owns, then we're going to focus on the meat and potatoes, just the stuff necessary to be able to provide first responder services to the island. Ma'am, all right.
What about the land near Old Buddies? I don't know if you are familiar. Oh, there's there's a CBD place.
That in particular, yeah, we're looking for available properties. So I'm sure staff, as part of their due diligence, is going to have conversations with property owners about the possibility of acquisition. But again, one of the challenging parts are if you're looking to buy those operations and those businesses, you're going to pay a premium, especially if they know that the community is not interested in other options and alternatives. It makes the price that they can demand and command a lot higher. So we are going to look at it. One of the things that I can tell you from, unfortunately, this is a process that, we've gotten this far in this process. But in most cases, what cities traditionally like to do is they work through a realtor, so you don't know who we are until we get to closing. Because if you know who I am, you're going to say, I'm going to charge you 20% more. And so that's one of the challenges with fire service, because you have to respect response times. If I was building a recreation center, you can do things differently. But if we're moving a station, you need to, in the spirit of transparency, make sure you have those community conversations. So it puts you behind the 8 ball as it relates to being able to try to acquire parcels without persons knowing exactly what you're trying to do.
Mr. Evans, if I may add to that, we are also looking at some additional properties and some additional options, but because of the concerns that you just mentioned, we're not ready yet to talk about those until we can get some good, hard, firm numbers, because that's another reason why it appears that there's this lack of transparency, where in all actuality, we're trying to protect the best interest of the community and not divulging all of our options at this time until we can get some of these numbers back.
And we have can everyone hear me?
Yes.
We have 2 comments online. One is, how can the city circumvent the charter, which clearly states that the city cannot build anything on that location?
The charter doesn't say that. The charter says that, and we're actually having legal provide a response in regards to that. It talks about recreational uses and leasing, but it doesn't put any stipulations that the city cannot construct something. And when you're talking about public safety, that's one of the things that when I reviewed the charter, and I'm not an attorney, and that's why we're having our attorneys handle that. We are looking at that, but it does speak as it relates to leasing or selling property. We're not leasing or selling property. There is a provision in there that says if you lease or sell property or lease, it has to be for a recreational entertainment purpose. But again, we're not leasing it or selling it. It's property the city owns, and we would be utilizing it in that capacity. But the attorneys are doing their homework on that, and Ms. Marsha Noel, the assistant to the city manager, is working on an FAQ that we will release probably in the next week or so once we get some of the questions answered for the residents.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment from Giselle Spigno. The proposed location is the best solution for the community. Having had the existing 86 next to my building for the past 6 years, it is not a nuisance at all. It is indeed the best alternative for single island residents and the city of Riviera Beach as a whole.
All right, thank you. Okay. Yes, sir.
Question about I'm sorry I came in a little bit late, you might have answered this before, but is the tennis court site, is that dedicated parkland?
The tennis court, a portion of the property, we did receive monies from the state, so we would have to mitigate the impact, and that's why we're proposing on the south part of the property to replace the tennis courts like for like, adding the 2 pickleball courts, relocating the tot lot adjacent to the pavilions, and then as an additional mitigation, we would make the property that the station is currently at right now like a passive nature walk or what have you. So we do have to go through a process that includes the state because we did receive monies for some park improvements. There is some, but I think as it relates to where we are looking to site it, I think it's specifically exclusively to the state.
We have one more comment. Mr. Evans, there is also a significant loss of, and this is from Fennel. Mr. Evans, there is also a significant loss of parking with the tennis court sites and adjustment to the 7-Eleven, adjacent to the 7-Eleven and other commercial facilities, in addition to expansion of the road to facilitate large fire trucks on the street. How is that being addressed? Thanks, Frank.
So I'll answer what I can, and then Chief Kurt, if you can jump in.
And that'll be our last question and comment, then we'll move on to our USD update.
All right. So as it relates to the parking area where the tennis court, I think it's a few spots that would be lost as a result of that. I think maybe 5 to 6. The chief can probably provide more perspective on that because he's worked on the design. We know that right there at any given time, there is tractor trailers that help service some of the businesses and operations that are there. So we don't think that our vehicles are not any larger than that, and we don't anticipate there being any conflict because we are going to make significant improvements to hopefully make that exit a lot safer for both pedestrians and vehicle stacking. One of the things that we've talked about is still being able to accommodate the loading and offloading for the 7-Eleven, being conscientious of the roadway that we need to be able to push out to get onto North Ocean. So we are conscientious of that. And actually, we believe by us siting a station there, we can actually make some improvements to make the pedestrian experience as well as the businesses there a lot safer than they currently are. Chief, if you want to provide some additional comments to that.
Yeah, as it relates to widening of the roadway, there's no widening of the roadway that's been proposed, discussed, or talked about. Our apparatus can traverse on a standard size roadway. As it relates to the loss of parking spots, while our ingress into the station will occupy up to about 4 spots, there's also going to be additional parking in front of the fire station on the fire station's property for people visiting the fire station. There will be parking along the front of the fire station that will remain. And as our point of egress, the majority of that point of egress is currently occupied right now by a dumpster. So there's a facility or a square block wall with some dumpsters that are in there that would be removed. And a majority of that area would actually be our point of egress. So when we talk about the loss of spots, you would be talking about a handful of spots at best, and also a relocation of where that dumpster area is located to facilitate the egress of the property.
Thank you, Chief. And in closing, I do want to say that nobody has a silver bullet for this issue. It is multifaceted, it is challenging, it is complex, it's sensitive. But at the end of the day, we want the residents to know that you may not like the options, you may not like the location, but we have to find a solution to this particular problem. And whomever and wherever and however someone wants to show us how we can look to work together collectively for the betterment of this community, we're all in. We want to find a way to do it. We want to find a way to do it respectfully. We've even looked at fire stations in New York and Chicago because those are compact stations, and how do they operate in these densely populated areas? So, we're looking at every option and alternative to be able to deliver a quality product to this community that you can say, hey, you know what? It didn't start off like this, but I'm still proud of the work that my community did listening to the concerns and responses. So there's going to be probably a lot more conversations and a lot more discussions on this. Continue to follow what's going on our website. Please subscribe to our newsletter. Certainly, our elected officials are on top of this. We do have another meeting about the same topic at Fire Station 86 on Saturday. Councilperson Lawson, who's here with us, thank you for being here, Councilman, is having a community meeting on Saturday, August 28th, so we'll be talking about that. And you know what? If you want to set up a tour of Fire Station 86, I'm sure the chief will certainly oblige that, because I think once you put your eyes on some of the challenges we have, you can get a different perspective of the environment that our first responders are in. So with that being said, I'm going to hang around, and if Mr. Brown or Councilperson Botel needs me, they can just call for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Evans.
you,
I
Mr. Evans.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We just said the same thing. And with that, we will go into our a brief USD update with our Assistant City Manager and Acting Director, Ms. Deirdre Jacobs, and her staff.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. It's always so hard to go behind Chief Kurt.
Could you speak up so everyone on the
No.
mic can hear you?
Oh, sure. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here with you this evening. I was saying it's always so hard to go behind Chief Kurt or Mr. Evans, but we'll do the best that we can. So we were asked to come this evening by Mr. Brown and Dr. Botel to just give you all a brief update on where we are over at the Utility Special District. We were here at her last town hall meeting. So if you were here in the past, you're probably aware of some of the things that are taking place. Just in case you're not, though, we can brief you on where we are with different improvements. Here this evening, along with me, and my name is Deirdre Jacobs, for the record, and I'm the Assistant City Manager and the Interim Director over at Utility Special District. But here this evening, along with me, is Mr. Armstrong. He's our professional engineer. Mr. Melvin Pinckney, he's the water treatment plant superintendent, and Dr. Williams, he's our compliance officer. So I'll just start with giving you an overview of where we are at the plant. Over the last several months, we've participated in many different improvement activities, our disinfection system, our electrical systems, our line feed systems. They're all undergoing constant construction activities for the benefit of improving all of our systems over at the district. Our lift stations, we have about 51 lift stations throughout the city. A large number of them are needing improvement activities. Mr. Armstrong is leading that particular project. We are up under a consent order at the health department. It primarily centered on, not even over on the Singer Island community, but far west out in the Gramercy Park community. We're working on making sure that all of those items are in compliance. As far as Dr. Williams goes, he was brought here to work with us from the city of Fort Lauderdale to help us with some of our laboratory activities. So far we've been pretty much in compliance whenever we do lab activities. Mr. Armstrong is also working with some water main and force main projects over here on Singer Island, which affects your community. So we're underway with that, and he'll probably go into that to explain that to you better. So with that said, after the end of our presentation, if you have any comments or questions, we'll be glad to answer them for you.
Good evening. John Armstrong, engineering staff. I guess two of the projects that Ms. Jacobs just mentioned was, one is a water main project, intercoastal water main. There's currently two drinking water mains that are pipes that serve the island. The drinking water plant is at 800 West Blue Heron Boulevard, just west of City Hall. So the water that serves the island for drinking water, irrigation, and fire protection, even though you don't have the new station yet. So one of those water mains was put in when the drinking water plant was installed back in the late 1950s. So it's an old pipe. So we want to put another pipe in to serve the island. So that's in the design phase, and so that should start construction next year and complete it by the following year. We also, another project is the intercoastal, and that's about just going, it's a subaqueous line that's going to be going underneath the water body, so it won't affect seagrass beds or fish or other critters in the water. And then another project back in the 1950s, a sanitary force main is a sewer pipe that pumps all the sewage from the island to the mainland. So that project is also in the design phase. So that'd be like 2.3 miles. So in addition to a subaqueous crossing of the intercoastal waterway, it'll pump from the main lift station on the island to one of our master lift stations that's on Avenue H on the mainland. So I heard a number, $10 million for some property. Those two combined, the cost for the design and permit and construct those, it'd be about $10 million. And so the timing, a big part of it is the easement acquisition we still have to do, and also the permitting. That could get pretty complicated with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Corps of Engineers.
Thank you, John. As Ms. Deidre stated, my name is Melvin Pinckney. I'm the superintendent at the water treatment plant. Right now, I'm overseeing the projects of the upgrades of the process at the water plant. We're upgrading 16 filters at the plant, all the processed chemicals at the plant. We are constantly working on getting those upgraded. The majority of this work should be finished around the end of this year, somewhere around in December, late December. So hopefully we'll have everything up and running to continue to work on quality, the drinking water to the best of our ability with what we are working with right now. And I think everyone is aware we're looking forward to, in the future here, to build another water plant. But right now, we're working with what we have to continue to finish all these projects that we have at hand right now. Thank you.
And good evening, I'm Dr. Anthony Williams. I'm the compliance officer for the Utility Special District. I can briefly touch on some compliance-related matters. The first thing I do want to point out is I don't have a lot of copies, but I did leave some copies of our annual water quality report over on the table. For those of you who do not get one, we do have it online. There is an electronic version. It is also, the link is also on your billing statements for your convenience. As far as compliance goes, many of you may have seen a recent public notification that has gone out regarding the exceedance of total coliforms. The reason we the reason we had to distribute that public notice, first thing first, is because the health department requires us to do so. The second reason is because it is just a way of being transparent with all of the residents regarding what's taking place in the water distribution system. It doesn't mean that the water is bad. It doesn't mean that there's anything that's going to harm you. It simply was an exceedance of our total coliform, and total coliforms usually give an indication that there could be an underlying problem. The caveat to that is that we are required to sample immediately when we find out that we have positive samples, and we did that. We did comply with everything that the rules and regulations state, and we did find that there was nothing that was alarming or anything that was considered an emergency for public notice. So that was the reason that we did release that public notice, just for you to understand what was taking place at the water treatment facility in the distribution system. As far as the other compliance items go, we do our monthly compliance sampling. We go out, we test all of the city, everything from Singer Island all the way west to Gramercy Park. We take samples every month. We check on all of the distribution, chlorine residuals, and we do monthly testing that's required by the federal EPA as well as the state. And every time we usually test, all of our readings are within compliance. Again, if there was anything that was alarming, we do our part to ensure the public knows about everything. And if you have any questions, we'll feel free to take anything.
We'll take 3 questions. Go ahead.
Can you explain why I have yellow water and I've had for over a year that comes into the toilet, shower, and my drinking water? When I make ice cubes, they turn out to be yellow. When I have drinking water, because I have a refrigerator, press the thing, I have filters on everything, but it still turns out yellow. And the water that comes in the toilets really, leaves that yellow tone. And then when I go to flush the toilets, in the morning especially, that there's not enough water to flush. You have to flush it 2 or 3 times before it'll finally go down. Just asking.
Maybe I can answer the color. The drinking water source is the superficial aquifer, the shallow aquifer, and there's some organics in the groundwater. So it comes from, the organics has it's called tannins, and it's things that you have organic matter when they break down, they have a little color to them. So it's naturally occurring. It's harmless. It doesn't look good, of course. There's a secondary drinking water standard for color, nephometric turbidity units, and so the color is within the secondary drinking water standard, but it's not good. So we are planning on building a new drinking water plant, and that new drinking water plant with newer technology will be able to remove all the color.
Because it really stains your toilet. I think, it's very hard. I have to pour bleach in and scrub just to get that every day. Of course, I clean the toilets every day, but it just is hard a material to remove.
We have another
And then
question.
you feed your animals, and then, with the filtered water, and it's not healthy.
Gotcha.
So I have to use bottled water. It's not good.
You have a question in the back?
Yeah, I just have a question for the engineer. Okay, thank you. Just for my own reference, you said that one of the pipes is being replaced that carries the sewage from the island over to the mainland. Is that correct? Did I understand that right?
Well, right now there's one pipe that serves the whole island.
Okay.
It pumps from Lift Station 10, a pump station that's on Park Avenue, and it pumps all the way to the mainland, 2.3 miles away. It's just one pipe. So this new pipe will be a second pipe, and then the other pipe will be a redundant backup.
Okay, that was my question. I wasn't sure if the pipe came from that Park Avenue pumping station. That's the main pipe that goes from the island with the waste, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then where in the mainland does that connect?
It's out on south of Wells Park, out on Avenue H, just south of, if you know where the water plant or City Hall is, it's right there, just on the south side. Across the street, further south, though.
So that's going to be replaced by another one, or are you going to have two that come from the island? I'm a little confused about that. Sorry.
Maybe I didn't say it clear. Yeah, there's one existing. There's going to be a new one installed, and the existing main will remain as a backup. So for redundancy, so there will be two after the new main is installed. But we only would need one, so it would just be a backup.
Do we have any more questions?
I'm not on the island, and I just noticed my water yellow. I didn't understand it. It just started like a week ago. I'm there at 23rd, the base of the bridge. I just don't trust that water. You say it's good to drink or whatever, but, you know, I buy my own ice and, you know, my own water. And when I had my little puppy there, I gave her water from the bottle. I just don't get the feeling. I don't get the feeling, and I know many people do. That water is just not safe. You say it's good to drink. I don't encourage anybody to drink that water. So my question is, how long are you going to take to kind of put the new pipe in? I think that's what I would like to know.
Well, the pipe, plan on constructing it, start construction next year, depending on timeframes for permitting and such, and then complete the following year. But the pipe doesn't affect the water quality, or the color. That's, the colors predominantly from naturally occurring in the aquifer, and the plant is not doing a good job of removing it. It's an old plant, an old technology. So, and we are doing some improvements, like Mr. Pinckney mentioned about the filters and different things. So, hopefully it'll improve some. But we should, in about 3 years, have a new drinking water plant and resolve all the color issues, which is just is a bad aesthetic. It looks bad, but it's, you know, it's safe to drink. It's so. You want to give your analogy?
If I may, I just like to let the audience know that lime softening, the process that we use is one of the oldest methods there is. We're looking into doing some type of membrane treatment. And when you use that type of treatment, it takes away the color. Everyone likes to see a clear glass of water. Everyone likes to see a clear glass of water. But this process, lime softening, only can take out so much color.
We never had it before. This
Yes.
started in my area.
As the,
A year and a half, maybe 2 years.
yes, ma'am.
I've been here 30 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Nobody's had great water, and the water bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Ridiculous.
And
We're
that,
not getting
and that's why we're doing, and that's why we're trying to do these upgrades to make it even better. Yes. Yes.
what permits? Why does it take so long to get a permit to get fresh water to people?
I'm not trying to be arbitrary here, but I see a number of different communities from the island represented here. Does anyone else have this problem with yellow water? Really?
I'm confused how some people are saying that they just started getting it a couple years ago. I've lived here since 2013 in Palm Beach Shores, and it's been yellow the entire time. So I'm not sure how some people had clear water and some people had.
My water's perfectly clear. It is.
I live in Palm Beach Isles.
So I would like to respond and make a comment. Having worked for other cities, even south of here, pulling from even a different aquifer, I can tell you that groundwater is naturally yellow. For those who know the environmental science behind it, if you actually take groundwater and you put it through a spectrophotometer, it gives you a range of numbers, starting with 0 being no color. Groundwater is naturally as high as 100 cobalts, which is the color. That's very yellow water. That's like tea. We can get the water down but so much with lime softening. And that is why we, as a city, are going to work hard to get a new treatment facility that will not use that but use a newer technology. I've worked in cities where they also have lime softening. They have the same problems. The reason you don't hear about it is because, number one, it may not be publicized as much, and number two, they have other facilities that are not lime softening, so that when it mixes into the distribution system, it now dilutes a lot of that color. But the city of Riviera Beach only has one treatment facility, and that's why we're working hard to make sure we upgrade that to have the newer technology.
Ms. Jacobs wanted to add something? Ms. Deidre, could you just, hold on 1 second till you get your mic?
Sorry. All of the activities, the improvement activities that we mentioned in the very beginning of our discussion, they're all being conducted so that they can assist with changing the color of the water. So we're not saying that we're not trying to minimize the color of the water, but what we can say is through our testing, because all of our water, it has to be tested through the lab, and it's all presented to the health department. So even though the issue exists where the water is considered the color a nuisance, it does not provide for any type of health issues. So yes, ma'am. So all of the improvements that are being done, they're being done so that we can try to minimize the color, the yellow color of the water.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. So we have one more question. Two.
My neighbors all have wells to water their lawns with. So every evening when the wells kick in and they're watering the lawn, there's a terrible odor that comes from the water source that they use. So I'm assuming that that's a well. From well water, you get that odor. Maybe it's sulfur. I'm not really sure what the odor is. It does smell like sulfur. What is our water source? Where is our water coming from? That's why I'm curious. Same kind of well system? Where are our wells on the island? Does it originate here on the island, the water source?
No, ma'am. The groundwater on the island is too salty. So, because it's close to the ocean, and the further west, there's like anyway, it's too salty. So all the wells are on the mainland. There's a lot of them near the water plant near the railroad tracks. We have also some further out as far west as Gramercy Park. The Gramercy Park used to have its own drinking water plant, so there's some wells out there. Some of the better wells that we have are the more productive wells are further east, not too far east, but near the drinking water plant.
So
Mr. Armstrong, how many wells total do we have? What's our total number of wells?
We have 27 drinking water supply wells.
Thank you.
And is it just one well from the other side that services all of Singer Island?
No, there's 27.
No, what I'm saying is, so all 27 feed into the island?
They feed into the drinking water plant
at
800 West Blue Heron Boulevard. And then from the drinking water plant, after it's treated, it's it's a lime softening treatment process, and it removes the hardness, so you don't need as much soap and detergent to wash. The water has a lot of calcium and magnesium, which is hard, and so that's the lime softening process. It hasn't been decided because we got people making proposals, but the most true and tried method for this type of artificial aquifer here in Florida is to have a membrane softening plant. So it softens the water by removing the calcium and magnesium and the bicarbonates out of the water. It also removes the color. It removes things down to, it's also called nanofiltration, things down to 1 nanometer, which is 10 to the minus 9 meters. It's it's the opposite of $1 billion. Hopefully that's the process that we go with. If we may end up doing some other things depending on what the proposals are, but it'll be a state-of-the-art plant. And
Okay.
yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, yes.
Alrighty.
To build it, to design it, permit it, and build it. Design-build project.
Okay, we have one more question in person and then one online.
Good evening. It's good to know that the Singer Island residents are having the same problem. I've been looking at the yellow discoloration of water in my toilet bowl. It's leaving a horrible stain. I scrub it with all kinds of chemicals. And I feel like most in here, I wouldn't drink that water. I don't give my pets that water. I don't drink the water. I buy bottled water. And I have bought ice for my freezer because I just don't trust the water. I don't trust it to drink. And I have tasted the water, and it upset my stomach, and I said, no, this water isn't safe. It's not good. And I have a very sensitive stomach. But I want to ask this question. With the new facility coming, you're guaranteeing us that this water is going to get better.
It'll be totally different, ma'am. Totally different. Totally different.
I'm 45
Totally
years old, and I've never seen yellow water until recently, within the last couple of years.
Right now, we're in the process of spending, I think it's somewhere around the price of like $12 to $13 million on the plant that we are at right now. Because of these upgrades, as I stated, we're upgrading the filters. That also going to help with some of the color. We're putting in new process chemicals. That's also going to help with the color. So the color should come down. But lime softening, as I stated earlier, is one of the oldest methods there is of treating water. And what we're looking into with the nano and the RO, one of the two, whatever the city and the council decide to go, you would see totally day and night when it comes to the water treatment. This plant, I think, was designed in the late 50s, 56, 58. So this plant is at the end of its life. So we definitely need to move forward. And I'm pretty sure the council and everyone from the island to Gramercy acknowledge that we need to do something with our water plant. You get it right away.
I got a statement. All right. Look, I'd like to make a quick statement on this. We all have that problem. We all realize that. We're beating a dead horse a little bit, all right? And I understand why. But it's antiquated. What we have right now is antiquated. And what the city's trying to do, and it unfortunately probably should have been done years ago, but none of us were here then, other than some residents, right, is that we didn't get a new water plant 10 years ago or 15 years. Here we are now, and right now, I've worked in the industry, and I can tell you right now, what they're trying to do is use Band-Aids wherever they can to get from here to there. It's not their fault, but they have no other way of getting there. And what they're planning on is getting the best possible system path forward. And it is what it is. What are we going to do about it?
And we have.
Thank you, sir.
And we have one more question from online. The question is, could the discoloration of water be from old pipes? Question mark.
Well, there could be, not from the water mains, but sometimes some of the plumbing. We do have some old galvanized pipe, not very much. And a lot of the plumbing may have that type of pipe. And so there may be some discoloration from the plumbing. One thing is if you go, let's say if you go on vacation or you come to Florida during the winter season and you come back, one thing that you'd want to do is you have a bunch of stagnant water that, in addition to having potential for color issues and corrosion, that it may have some bacteria in it. So you want to, when you come back from vacation, a long time where you may not be using water, you want to flush it and probably not turn your hot water on because the water will get into your water heater and it could, that old water that's been in there could lower the life of your water heater. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, the city manager.
Additionally, I do want to talk up just a little bit about bottled water, and I'm not going to try to speak as if I'm advocating either for it or against it. But when it comes to bottled water, and I've seen this firsthand through my studies all the way up to my doctorate level, bottled water, first of all, is very filtered, okay? When I say filtered, it goes through so many strenuous processes to where it's stripping out the chlorine, it's stripping out some of the nutrients that your body actually needs, and it becomes very aggressive. So when you have bottled water, you have aggressive water. On top of that, bottled water does not go through the levels of regulation as drinking water does. And you don't know, and no one here can say that they know where their bottled water comes from or what it goes through prior to getting to your home. That is why the USDA had to regulate when it came to the type of plastic that was used for your bottled water. However, that does not change the fact that you don't know the process that your bottled water goes through. We can be as transparent as we can and tell you where our water comes from. We can tell you what the bacteria levels are. We can tell you what the color is, but you won't know what your bottled water has in it. You can take a bottled water, your best bottled water brand out today, and put it up next to one of our drinking water samples. And I can guarantee you that we will pass a bacteria test, and that bottled water might have a good chance of failing. But I will say this, just to respond to your comment, ma'am, clear is not always the safety. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Did you want to say something? All right, we're moving on to our next topic. So now we'll have Chief Curd one more time talking about hurricane preparedness and COVID-19 information. And I want to thank you again, staff, and Ms. Jacobs and Mr. Evans for that.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Brown, if there are any questions, if you can repeat them into the microphone because we can't hear anybody in the audience, it'd be greatly appreciated. But I'm going to start off with hurricane season. We're clearly in the midst of hurricane season. We've already had a couple of storms that we've had to keep an eye on, in addition to 3 storms that we're monitoring right now out into the Atlantic, or out in the Atlantic, excuse me. Some of the things that we want to impress upon our community is, at this point, we should have already have completed our hurricane preparedness. And as Riviera Beach being a municipality in Palm Beach County, we are an annex to Palm Beach County's emergency management plan. So we piggyback off of their hurricane preparedness plan. And in that plan, one of the things that we need to be doing is obviously we need to make a plan. We got to know what we're going to do. And knowing what you're going to do is going to be the best protection, but it's also your responsibility to know what you're going to do in the event of a storm. Familiarize yourself with the evacuation zones. If we find ourselves in a situation where we're evacuating the barrier island, that shouldn't come as a shock to you that live on Singer Island. You should already have an understanding of whether or not you're going to relocate and utilize one of the shelter options, or you're going to shelter with family and friends in the area. But you need to make sure that you have that plan in place. Determine where you're going to get all of your supplies from. You want to make sure that you have a way to stay in touch with family and friends while we utilize cell phones quite regularly. There always is the possibility of losing cell phone communication. So understanding what plan you're going to have in place for that, and also understanding, because we're so dependent upon our electronics, that you have those battery backups, those portable batteries, so that you can utilize your cell phone when you do get a signal to stay in touch with family, because we do receive many calls, and a great deal of them are from family members north in the northeastern part of the U.S. that after a storm want us to do welfare checks on their family in Singer Island because they've been unable to get a hold of them. And clearly that's resources that we dedicate to that. So we ask you to make sure you have that plan. Build a kit. Make sure you have the emergency essentials. Not all storms are going to require an evacuation, but if they don't, you still have the potential to lose power. So make sure you have those emergency essentials, your important documents, so that if you do need to leave, you have them available to you. And some of your medications, you may want to talk to your physician about providing you with a 3-month supply of medication, especially during hurricane season, so that you have all of those things needed in the event of a storm. And as we see with these storms, they pop up quickly. Some of them we do get to see and we watch them coming. A lot of people kind of wait and want to see what it's going to do. And by the time you realize that this is going to be a direct hit, we're 72 hours out. You're trying to get medication. You're trying to get supplies and things that you need, and it's just not available. Make sure that you stay informed. If you can sign up for the city's Code Red, that's how we're going to communicate emergency messaging to the community. Make sure you're following us on Facebook and some of our other social media platforms where during these times, me, Mr. Evans, and our police chief, Chief Osgood, provide community updates at the time prior to, during, and after the storm to help keep our community informed of what's going on. But monitor your local stations, whether it be Channel 12, Channel 5, 29, whatever it is you watch, because they do provide some useful information as far as the track goes and some of those things. So there really isn't a whole lot on hurricane season. In our last quarterly meeting, we had the conversation about preparation. We are well beyond the preparation phase. We are now in the waiting phase. And right now we are at the height of hurricane season. So right now is where we need to be most vigilant as it relates to being prepared for the storms. I'm going to go into COVID-19 because I think that deserves a little bit more time than hurricane season. There's a lot of information that's come out. I'll try to abbreviate it, but yet not skip over anything. I always talk about the numbers to try to impress upon individuals what the situation is. And last week in Florida, there were over 150,000 new cases. And these are all records. The week before that, I think it was 151,000, which was an all-time record. This week's 150,000. And the majority of this is the Delta variant. And our daily positivity rate in the state of Florida is now at 19.8%. If you were following along throughout the pandemic, you understood that that 5% threshold is where contact tracing becomes effective, and we're at 19.8%. So essentially, there is no ability to contact trace. You ask an individual what they've done and who they've been in contact with over the last 72 hours, you might get 300 names. So contact tracing is not effective. In Palm Beach County, let's bring it in a little bit closer. Last week, we had 9,257 new cases. Again, the majority of those being the new Delta variant. Our positivity rate in Palm Beach County is 17.9%. So we're not far off from what the state is seeing. Bringing it in a little closer, looking at some of the Census Tract data in Riviera Beach, every single number is spiked off the charts. We are seeing numbers well beyond anything we saw during what they're calling the first, second, and third wave, this being the fourth wave. Because of what we're seeing and working with our county partners, not only did Palm Beach County declare a state of emergency, but the city of Riviera Beach has also declared a state of emergency. This is going to allow us to procure certain things and do things a certain way to make sure that we can get resources out to the community as efficiently as possible. Let's talk about testing. Currently in Riviera Beach right now, there are 2 testing sites. One is at Jay's Ministries. That testing is being done every Tuesdays, on every Tuesday from 10 to 4. And Jay's Ministries is located on 2831 Avenue F.
And that
On
information is
Thursdays,
also included
we're
in
at
your
Wells
packet.
Recreation Center, and I say we've partnered with one of our laboratories as the state is no longer providing the resources and the funding for testing. We've done the best we could to partner with somebody to bring them into the community to make sure that this testing is available to our residents. And at Wells Recreation Center, every Thursday from 10 to 4, we are providing COVID-19 testing. Wells Recreation Center is located at 2409 Avenue H West, which is directly across from City Hall. If you are looking for other testing sites, there is a litany of them. If you go to discover.pbcgov.org, discover.pbcgov.org, there is actually a COVID-19 testing finder. You put in your zip code, whether you want a 1 mile radius, 5 mile radius, it'll tell you every location within that radius that is providing COVID-19 testing, and also what insurances they take, whether it's free, whether there is a copay. So that is a very useful tool. As it relates to vaccinations, and this seems to be the topic of conversation right now, Currently, the city of Riviera Beach has partnered with the Palm Beach County Health Department to provide vaccinations every Thursday at Wells Recreation Center. Again, that address was 2409 Avenue H West, and vaccinations are occurring from 10 to 4 every Thursday at Wells Recreation Center. Now, pay particular attention. The next section here is new information to me, as the medical professionals that we deal with are filtering this information, and it has to do with the booster shot. Please understand there is a difference, and medical professionals are distinguishing the difference between what is known as a third shot and what is known as a booster shot. Those are two different things. A third shot is what the FDA has approved for individuals who are immunocompromised. And when we talk about individuals that are immunocompromised, we're talking about individuals that have recently received active cancer treatment for tumors or cancers of the blood, received an organ transplant and taking medicine that suppresses the immune system, received a stem cell transplant within the last 2 years and taking medication to suppress the immune system, advanced or untreated HIV, active treatment with high-dose corticosteroids or drugs that may suppress the immune system. Those individuals are eligible for a third shot. Don't call it a booster. It is not a booster shot. It is a third shot. Test trials have shown that individuals with compromised immune systems didn't build the level of immunity with a 2-shot regimen, and we're talking about Pfizer and Moderna only. With Pfizer and Moderna, individuals who are immunocompromised did not build that antibody threshold that was being looked for. So they've authorized a third shot to get their immune system to the threshold needed. There are no booster shots that are approved in the United States. Please don't call me tomorrow and want your booster shot. Please don't call Publix and want your booster shot. The FDA has not approved booster shots. If they tell you they're giving you a booster shot, they're misconstruing what a third shot is and what a booster shot is. They anticipate booster shots will be given beginning the latter part of September into early October. Once FDA approval is authorized, we will begin booster shots. Booster shots will be rolled out in the same fashion that vaccinations were rolled out, beginning with the elderly, coming down in those age groups that we saw with the initial vaccinations. Time constraints to both. If you are immunocompromised and you want a third shot, you can only receive it 4 weeks after your second shot. Booster shots can only be received once they're approved 8 months from your last shot. So you can't come in and say, I got my vaccination in April or May, I want my booster shot. You are not going to get your booster shot. It is going to be rolled out in the same fashion. And all the studies that I've seen and all the studies that have been shown, really 8 months is when your immune system starts to dip to what they consider that baseline level, and that booster is to bring you back up. So understand, third shot, immunocompromised. There are no booster shots. When they become available, we'll make sure that it is put out to our community through our website, through our social media, all of those things that I'm sure you all are following on a weekly basis to stay in touch with what the city of Riviera Beach is doing. So please understand those differences. I can't impress upon you all enough if you haven't been vaccinated. I am going to say, shame on you. Shame on you for putting our physicians and our hospitals in the position that you put them in, where we have individuals sleeping on floors and we have unvaccinated individuals apologizing to physicians. I should have got the vaccine. I don't know why I didn't get. I read something on Facebook. I heard my neighbor say there is enough data and to prove, and with Pfizer reaching full FDA approval, there is no reason now why individuals shouldn't get vaccinated. One other important piece of information is the city of Riviera Beach is working with the state and the Palm Beach County Health Department to begin in-home treatment of the monoclonal therapy antibody treatment with a product called Regeneron. This is a phenomenal product, but remember, Regeneron is not the, well, I'm not going to get vaccinated. If I get sick, I'll just get Regeneron. Oh, you're not going to take the vaccine, but you're going to let me give you this stuff. We got to be smarter. We got to do better. Whatever the conspiracy theories are, the nanobots, they hold a black light up to their skin and they can see it in their bloodstream. And I can't even fathom some of these rumors and where they've came from. But please, I plead to you as your fire chief, as the individual that's responsible for your health and safety and the health and safety of our community. If I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't have gotten it myself. I wouldn't have asked my wife to get it, nor would have had my children get it. And fortunately, nobody in my household and very few people that I know that have been vaccinated actually find themselves admitted into an emergency room. You may find yourself in an emergency room because you're not feeling good, but you're not going to die. And that's what's important. So thank you for your time. I don't want to go on any longer. You understand where my feelings and sentiments are, and I know we still have a lot to get to. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Any questions? All righty. Thank you so much, Chief Curd. We always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a nice night. Next on our agenda is the Lake Worth Lagoon and the Managed Mooring Field Update Q&A. We're going to start with a Senior Assistant City Attorney, Lina Busby. Is she on?
She's on, Sam.
Okay. Just waiting for it to change. Ms. Busby, can you hear us?
Maybe we should move to Mr. Sprague and just, oh no, here's Lina, sorry.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Great.
Okay, good evening. So Councilperson Botel, you wanted us to speak concurrently, me and Mr. Sprague, about the mooring field?
You could, I'm not sure we can put you both on, but Walter, do we have the ability to put both presenters on about the mooring field? It's going to be very.
Why don't I introduce the issue, because really legal has not had, we've met with Mr. Sprague and we've advised him, but this item is still in a very, I would say, new phase. He still has a lot of work to do before it gets to legal and before it goes before the city council. So maybe we can talk to him about what work he's currently doing and how he's consulting on this managed mooring field going forward.
That would be great. Mr. Sprague?
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a city marina consultant that's been involved in replacing and expanding the city marina. A little while ago, the council tasked me with looking at the possibility of whether or not we should put mooring fields in the waters of Riviera. A good part of that was driven because of derelict vessels sinking and winding up on the bottom, blowing into our waterfront homeowners' docks or the commercial facilities along the shore, and water quality concerns as well. So based on that, we applied to the Florida Inland Navigation District for grant funding assistance. We were awarded $75,000. And so we started the process. We've held a number of workshops. We've talked to business owners, we've talked to residents. And let me clear the air on one thing. We were looking at a few different sites, but the Phil Foster site has been removed from the process. And we will definitely not be moving forward with that particular area. For those of you that don't know what a mooring is, normally vessels that we see all over our waters, if they're not on a dock, they're on an anchor and line and usually chain. There are some boats that are tied to engine blocks that were dropped illegally on state lands bottoms. But aside from that, the problem with anchor and lines is that first of all, with the wind and the tide, the boat goes in a big circle and the chain is laying on the bottom. So that chain goes in that circle. When it does, it kills all the seagrass that's in that particular area. If there's any coral outcroppings, it'll take those down as well. So there is a large concern of vessels continually being on anchor and line and chain. Some of them, depending upon the water depths, there's not a lot of chain. But if you're in storm events, like we get severe thunderstorms where all of a sudden we get 50, 60 knots of wind, unless you've got a fair amount of chain on, you're probably going to drag anchor. And of course, the problem with that is even if your anchor takes hold again, now you start forming a brand new circle, destroying more seagrass. So the council discussions about all that, they raised their concerns because they care about the environment. So we started that process. We've done bathymetric studies, which is the water depths throughout, because we need to know what those are, where moorings might be placed. We've been working on all the setbacks for channels and things involving with upland property owners. We also have to stay within the regulations of the state of Florida, who owns all this bottom land that's laying off of our city, or the majority, I should say, not all. So we've completed that. We did side scanning sonar, and so we know where all any boats that are sunk on the bottom, we know where all the engine blocks are and whatever, which is also part of it in the mooring field because we put them in. We need to make sure the boats don't run into engine blocks and those kinds of things. They could do damage to them. We're getting ready to work on the management plan, which is part of it. So it tells everybody what the rules and regulations are. So there's a whole lot of work that's been done. Next month, I'm not sure what the date is, but I believe I will be doing an exhaustive report to the city council where everybody can see everything, all the work that's been done, the results of those work. Hope to have all the cost factors, the layout designs of exactly what we're proposing. And then that process will lead us hopefully into the permitting phase. And the permitting phase is done by the state of Florida and it's done by the U.S. Army Corps. And they're the ones that set all the regulations, and included in those, that's where public input, whether it's citizens, anybody who wants to comment, marina owners, government, agencies, everybody comments on the mooring fields. And then those two agencies make a decision on whether or not they feel the fields need to be modified, not put in at all, whether the management plan is sufficient, having to do with their concerns. And also one other thing, by putting in mooring fields and protecting seagrass, the city will get some, it's more than brownie points. It's actually will aid the city in the ability to finish our fourth phase of the marina expansion. And hopefully it will save a lot of money and time that the mooring fields will help provide because of the protection of the seagrass. That's all I got.
All righty,
Thank you so much, Mr. Sprague. Appreciate that. While I have Attorney Busby on the line still, and I want to reiterate for people, there will be no managed mooring field off of Sugar Sands. As much as I am in favor of managed mooring fields, I think they're wonderful for the environment, for the seagrass, for everything. I listen to the constituents that we have on Singer Island, on the Sugar Sands community, and there will be no managed mooring field off of Sugar Sands. But I do want to commend Attorney Lina Busby, because she's been doing a yeoman's work in terms of helping us get rid of not only the submerged boats that are out there, but also the floating structures and the liveaboards. And if she could just very briefly tell about the ordinance that's had first reading already by City Council, and we'll be having a second reading in the not too distant future, just so that people are aware of the fact that we're working on these floating structures and liveaboards as well. Ms. Busby?
Thank you, Councilperson Botel. Only because of your guidance were we able to really not just get the city on board for a first reading of the floating structures ordinance, but most of all, the county. They were very motivated by the city's willingness and aptitude for these regulations. So, of course, you have to take a lot of credit for being a part of that task force and leading the county, to some additional regulations. So as I presented at the first reading for the floating structures ordinance, this really came about because we were having a lot of enforcement issues. The water does not have there's not a bright line in the water that says this is county water, this is city water. So the county did enact this ordinance, which would include all municipalities unless they opt out. And if they opt out with their own ordinance, it's only, the county's ordinance will still apply except for the part that would be in conflict that the city is changing or creating additional regulations for. So that's what you saw in the first reading. There are additional regulations because we wanted to include all the waters of the city. We also took the opportunity in providing some updates to our own code of ordinances as it related to, we wanted to include a new definition for derelict vessels, the definition for liveaboards, and also, provide regulations that we would require liveaboards to really have all of the necessary equipment so that they could have be in compliance with certain health codes and the noise ordinance. And that's what we did with that first reading of the ordinance. And as you said, we're trying to get it on for second reading for this upcoming meeting in September. So we look forward to that passing at the city council level.
Thank you so much. We're really excited about that. Thank you, Mr. Sprague and Ms. Busby, again for being here this evening. We really appreciate all the information. Back to you, Sam.
Can everybody hear me? In the back of your packet, there are upcoming events and important dates, such as our CRA meeting, our city council meeting, our utility district meeting, and I just wanted to provide that to you so you guys have a physical calendar so you can never say, I didn't email you about the meeting. And with that being said, that's all on our agenda, unless you have any questions, and we'll take 3 of them. Okay.
2 questions.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
During, a lot of times during the storm drainage, during the storms and stuff, the drains in the
Could you speak into the mic a little more, please?
Maybe this one's
Sure. During storms, in my neighborhood, I don't know if any others, the storm drains get filled with leaves and everything else that's brewing, and they run right into them, and then they get so backlogged that the streets start flooding. So how come these drain things aren't cleaned? The other question is the moorings. Why don't we charge money? I sail all over many, many islands, and I always have to pay mooring fees.
Oh, they'll be paid. They'll be charged.
Oh, good.
Mr. Evans.
With regards to the drainage, I do authorize staff in the event of inclement weather. I make sure that all our crews go out there and remove trash, waste, and debris. But some of the things that becomes that much more challenging is if neighbors place vegetation close to storm drains and we don't all do our part collectively, those stormwater drains fill up very quickly. And especially when you get the volume of rain that we have, and for all intent and purpose, we know that, hey, the ocean is just right there, it becomes a challenge. But one of the things we do anytime there's even just inclement weather, I tell the stormwater crew to go out there and remove trash, waste, and debris outside of the storm drains. So when we do have an impending threat of a hurricane or tropical storm, we then deploy all our city personnel, public works included, to actually trim back some of the vegetation and what have you. So the more stuff we can move out, the better off the problem is. But, when we get the winds and the rains, that's one of the challenges we do have. But we do send staff out.
Just for clarity, Mr. Evans, maybe you or Julie Botel could answer. I've heard that there will be no mooring fields in that section of the intercoastal off Sugar Sands. Can you hear me, Julie?
I can.
Okay, no mooring fields. Okay,
No
all right.
mooring
And
fields
then,
off Sugar
okay,
Sand.
and earlier it was said there'd be no mooring fields at Phil Foster Park. Are we talking about the same north side of the bridge? Or are we
Mr.
going to have
Sprague.
mooring fields on the
Yeah,
south side of the bridge?
If I could, we use more Phil Foster, rather than using a condo as a location. Phil Foster is a county park, so the mooring field would be located between the county park and Sugar Sands, was where it was originally looked at.
Right.
That area has been taken off the list.
Thank you.
Hold on a second.
So,
It's hard to hear.
and I can. The question was, what about the bridge in Peanut Island? Now, let me just provide some additional clarity. There has been a study that has been done. That study and its findings and where the locations are is still a policy decision that the collective board has to make a decision on should they choose to move forward in that particular discussion. So there's areas that have been studied, but it hasn't been something that the collective board has says proceed forward with these particular areas, because that requires the entire balance of the council. And so that's why Mr. Sprague communicated there's going to be a comprehensive report that's going to be provided to the board and a discussion for them to have related to the topic. So there is subsequent conversations that need to occur before the board can look to make a decision on that. So, there may be some give and take with regards to that, and we have to make sure that the board as well as the collective community has the appetite for that. No, it's the city council. In a represented republic, which our government is founded on, you elect a representative to do what you think is in the best interest of the community. It happens like this in 412 municipalities in the state of Florida. It happens like this in every other government agency across the nation. It is not a situation where we put out a vote to the voters and it's a popularity vote. Your elected member and your city council as an entire body actually set policy. That's their job. That's their responsibility. So if you like or don't like something, certainly I would encourage you to have conversations with the elected officials, because at the end of the day, they have to make that decision. Who the? The Army Corps, all those entities have to provide permits, but at the end of the day, if you do the process as prescribed, they will grant you the permits, but the elected officials have to say that this is something that we want to move forward with. If they don't say that, we as staff are not permitted to go through the process because the board doesn't wish to go in that direction.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Evans. We appreciate it. We have time for one more question, unless that's all. Okay, thank you. Dr. Botel, would you like to say anything?
Just a big thank you to everyone who participated this evening, both in the
Oops,
audience.
Dr.
and-
Botel, hold on one second. We had one comment.
closing comment. I think we definitely elected the right representative to represent us.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Is that Connie? Thank you, Connie, for that vote of confidence. I appreciate it. I'm doing my best, and I hope I am representing you well. And again, thank you so much for being here this evening. I know there are still many questions to be answered about a number of issues. We'll continue to have meetings like this. We'll continue to be open and transparent. Have a great evening, and thanks for being here. Good
Have a
night.
nice night.